The transmission shouldn't have been possible. Dr. Elias Voss stared at the console, his breath fogging the visor of his suit. The research station buried beneath Europa's ice had been abandoned 10 years ago. Its last transmission, a garbled mess of static and half-spoken words. The official reports claimed an equipment failure, an unfortunate but routine loss of a deep space outpost. But now, the station was broadcasting again. The signal pulsed in perfect intervals, an artificial rhythm unmistakable to anyone trained in deep space communication. Elias had spent the last 6 months in orbit around Jupiter, analyzing cryovolcanic activity, mapping the moon's shifting ice layers. But this was something else. The old station, Erebus 1, had been unreachable for a decade. No one had survived. Nothing should have been left. And yet, the transmission wasn't just a distress call. It was a voice. Faint, distorted, but undeniably human. "You have to listen. It's still. Underneath." Then static. A heartbeat later, the signal repeated. Elias swallowed, forcing his mind to push past the unease creeping through his chest. "Control, are you receiving this?" The reply came almost instantly, sharp and businesslike. "Copy, Elias. We're analyzing now. It's odd. Signal's coming from Erebus 1, but that's impossible. You're sure it's not a relay glitch?" Elias exhaled slowly. "No way. This is a direct transmission. And the voice." He hesitated. "I think it's Dr. Kieran Holt." A silence stretched across the comms channel. "Elias, Holt's been dead for 10 years. Elias knew that. Everyone did. Holt had been the lead xenobiologist stationed at Erebus 1. When the station went dark, Holt and his team were presumed dead. No rescue mission was ever launched. The ice had swallowed Erebus 1, making recovery impossible. Yet here he was, whispering across the void. The console blinked. The transmission restarted. "You have to listen. It's still, underneath." Underneath. Elias's stomach twisted. For years, speculation surrounded what Erebus 1 had discovered. The station had been drilling into Europa's subsurface ocean, searching for signs of microbial life. Some theories suggested they'd found something NASA never disclosed. The official reports were clinical, detached, but the whispers among exobiologists told a different story. Something was alive down there, and Erebus 1 had woken it up. Elias clenched his jaw. "I'm going down there." "Negative." Control responded immediately. "You're not equipped for deep ice traversal, and if this is some kind of anomaly..." "Someone is down there," Elias interrupted. "Or something. Either way, I need to see it for myself." A long pause. Then, "Elias, we're authorizing a short descent. But if you lose comms, we're pulling you back. Understood?" He nodded, sealing his suit. The transport pod's hatch hissed as it cycled open. Beyond the airlock, the icy abyss of Europa waited, stretching endlessly beneath him. As he descended, the last transmission played again. "It's still underneath." He didn't know if it was a warning or a plea. The transport pod shuddered as it broke through the upper layers of Europa's ice. Elias braced himself, gripping the cold metal bars of the cockpit. The walls creaked under the shifting pressure. The outside world, a vast frozen darkness. The ice drill attached to the pod bored downward, carving through the thick layers like a needle threading through ancient fabric. He monitored his descent through the heads-up display, watching as Erebus 1's buried coordinates grew closer, half a mile down. Then the first anomaly appeared. The ice scanner flared red. The pod's automated systems were reading inconsistencies, pockets within the ice where density shifted dramatically. Unstable terrain. But that wasn't what made Elias's breath catch. The pockets weren't random. They formed a pattern. Vast symmetrical voids, tunnels, spiraled downward in an almost organic design. No natural phenomenon could have caused this. Something had moved through the ice. Elias checked the console. The transmission was still playing on loop, but now it was changing. The static thickened, distorting the voice into something stretched, elongated. "You have to listen. It's still. A flicker of movement on the monitor. Elias's fingers twitched over the control panel. "Control, I'm picking up strange formations in the ice. He hesitated. "There's a tunnel system here." A pause. Then, "Elias, we're not seeing anything on our end." "Are you sure?" "Positive. It's..." The pod lurched. A violent impact slammed against the side, sending Elias crashing into the harness. Warning lights flared as the stabilizers fought against an unseen force. Something was pulling him down. The drill cut out. The pod was no longer descending. It was falling. Elias barely had time to react before the ice gave way beneath him, swallowing the pod whole. The abyss. For a few heart-stopping moments, there was only weightlessness. Then a deafening crash. Elias's vision blurred as the pod smashed through what felt like thin ice, plunging into frigid, inky water. The emergency floodlights flared to life, illuminating the space around him. And that's when he saw it. Erebus 1. The station lay half buried in the ice, its structure cracked and contorted as if something had crushed it. The windows were shattered. A faint light flickered from inside, casting eerie patterns through the dark water. The comms crackled. Underneath. The voice was no longer distorted by static. It was clear, close. Elias's breath hitched. Then he saw the movement. Something inside Erebus 1 shifted. A shadow, liquid and unnatural, slithered just beyond the broken glass, watching him. The transmission cut out. Then, in perfect, chilling clarity, a new voice, his own voice, whispered through the speakers. "Elias, open the hatch." Elias's blood turned to ice. The voice had been his own, perfectly replicated, calm, steady, wrong. His hands hovered over the pod's control panel. The hull creaked as the abyss pressed against it, the crushing weight of Europa's hidden ocean squeezing the metal frame. Outside, Erebus 1 loomed like a decayed carcass, half submerged in the frozen blackness. And something was waiting inside. "Elias." The voice came again, softer this time. "Open the hatch." He swallowed hard, forcing himself to focus. The station's beacon was still active, its dim light pulsing in slow intervals. That shouldn't have been possible. After 10 years, the power core should have long since failed. Something was keeping it alive. Elias activated the exterior cameras. The feed flickered, streaked with static, but the image sent a fresh wave of dread through his body. Something was standing in the broken window of Erebus 1. Not floating, standing. It was human-shaped but distorted, its limbs elongated, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its body flickered between states, solid, then liquid, then something in between. The longer he stared, the more his mind rebelled against understanding it. Then it moved. With impossible speed, the figure vanished from the window. A sharp clang echoed through the water. Elias's breath hitched. It was on the pod. He reached for the thrusters, his fingers trembling. The console glitched. The controls flickered. His vision blurred. A deep, numbing pressure filled his skull, like something inside his mind was shifting. His own voice whispered again. "It's still underneath." The memory slammed into him like a physical blow. He wasn't supposed to be here. The transmission, Holt's warning, it wasn't a distress call. It was bait. And he had answered. The glass viewport darkened. Elias turned just in time to see something pressing against it. A hand. No, his hand. The face that emerged from the darkness was his own. Pale, waterlogged, with empty, blackened eyes. It smiled, a slow, unnatural curl of lips, and knocked once against the glass. Knock. His ears rang. The world swam. Knock. His limbs felt heavy. He tried to move, but something inside him held him still. Knock. Darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. The last thing he heard was his own voice whispering in his ear. "It's still underneath." Then the hatch unlocked, and the ice swallowed him whole.